Hi, Erin.
Hello, Kim. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. How are you doing?
I am doing well. This would be so much more fun if we were, having coffee in person as we have done, but this
Yeah,
works
that
too. Virtual.
well, we can do it like in a week or two. That'd
Yeah,
be
there you
well.
go.
So,
Yes.
I wanted to talk to you about your habits and routines, personal
Yeah.
and business.
Awesome. I love talking about routines. Let's do it.
Oh, good. She's just like me.
Yes.
Okay, so my first question is, do you have structure in your day? Like, how do you structure it?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I need structure and I love structure. And at the same time, I also give myself allowances for like flexibility or days that I just don't feel like I never force myself into something that I'm just not feeling that day. But I absolutely am a creature of habit. That's how I've always described myself. And here's a quick story for you because I'm all about stories.
He's a
But
storyteller.
yes, and I've got some good ones that Kim knows that probably aren't appropriate for this podcast, but I remember one time years ago, I was still in college and I was waitressing, and somehow the conversation came up with a coworker about breakfast. And I said, "Oh, I had my toast, peanut butter, and coffee like I do every single day." And they were like, "Wait, you eat the same thing every day?" And I was like, "Yeah, is that weird? I mean, I don't eat every meal the same every day, but for breakfast, I like to have something that I don't have to think about. I like the comfort of just having the same sort of routine every morning. And I'm not the best morning person. So having just something that's very routine and habitual is easy and comforting for me. So yeah, definitely a creature of habit.
So, did you say peanut butter and coffee?
Peanut butter toast and coffee.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so
So
are
that,
you still doing that?
I am not, and here is why. So I did it for years and years and years, and it's still something that I kind of miss. But I started intermittent fasting a few years ago, and so I don't actually eat anything, in the morning. And um, it was hard for me to give up. That was probably the hardest thing, was like just the comfort of having that routine. Like, but I always eat my peanut butter toast. But I think with any habit or routine, once you get into a new, like just creating that new habit, and here's like my new routine, and what do I replace, that experience with, then, now I'm fine. And I still have my peanut butter toast, but it's like an afternoon snack.
Oh, so you still have it every day.
I do. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can't go without the peanut butter.
No,
I get
no.
it. I get
Yeah.
it because I have a snack at night.
Right.
After I eat, I have an almond. No, not almond. I like that too. I have that in other things, but
Yes.
I have my cashew butter
Oh
snack.
my gosh. Yes.
I
Cashew butter.
You
It's
should see
so
all the
good.
jars in my trash can.
No,
I
that
go
that
through
is.
maybe one or two jars a week of
Oh my
cashew
gosh.
butter.
No, you sound like me though. I love cashews, and actually I just discovered skinny dipped cashews. They have like the dark chocolate, and there's a sea salt caramel dark chocolate cashew, and it's amazing. Yes.
Is it a
Yes, you
spread?
gotta try it.
Is it a spread?
No, it's like a whole cashew dipped in dark chocolate.
Oh my gosh.
But they're actually like rather healthy because it's a very low sugar, very dark chocolate. And so that's what I've been eating after dinner, is like, a little handful of those. Yeah.
Oh, a handful. I was going to say, do you eat just one?
No, no, no. I think like six. I always do like a half a dozen.
Oh, okay. So I know that you're a writer. Do
Yes.
habits and routines set you up for writing?
Yeah, absolutely. That is, for me, again, I would go back to like the need for flexibility and like the muse, right? There are times when you're just like, I have an idea. And you probably know this too, because you do
Yes.
a lot of writing and creating. Um, there are times when I just have an idea and I have to do it right then. And so even if it's not part of my routine or whatever, I'll be flexible and go with the flow. But one thing that I would say about writing, and it's funny because I am a writer, people always go, "Oh, you must love writing if that's what you do." And it's like sometimes, but like anything, there's times that we don't feel like doing it. We don't feel like doing even something we love. I love going to the gym. That doesn't mean I always like, feel like going to the gym. And so with writing, I feel like it is really important to have a routine and have structure so that you sit down even on the days you don't feel the muse, because sometimes she's gone for a really long time and you still have to produce.
So do you just write? Do you write at the same time every day when you can? And do you just write, like I've done it where I can't think of anything and I just write just to write, just like for
yes.
5 minutes and write blah, 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 blah if I have to.
Yes, absolutely. So I do two different kinds of, well, I do lots of different kinds of writing, but there's like the personal journaling, which I do every single morning while I'm drinking my coffee. So every single morning I journal. Yes. And sometimes it's about like nothing important, but it's just the practice of writing and, getting out any maybe anxieties or even things you're excited about or dreams and visions, whatever. So I do that every single morning at the same time. And then I do, like, I feed my dogs, and I have 4 of them. So it's like a whole ordeal. I feed my dogs, I take them out, I do all of that. And then it's, I get ready for the day, and then it's time to, get back to writing, but for work. And so same as you, it's, it's time to write. And if I don't have anything to say, I just start. And I was literally thinking, as you said, I'll write blah, blah, blah. I literally write the word blah in like blank spaces where I don't know what I want to say yet. I just put blah. And then, I think, and I don't know if you can relate to this or not, but I have a feeling you can. Once you start doing that and you just kind of forcing yourself, you're like, I'll write for 5 minutes. Then you do start getting into the flow and the ideas do start coming, and you do usually end up working for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah. And the brain kicks in.
Yeah. It's kind of like a warm up. You got to get into the mode sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I'm the same.
Yeah.
What's one habit you can't live without?
Oh gosh. Probably there's many, but coffee, definitely. So the name of this podcast is very appropriate. So yeah, I cannot go without coffee. Not just because of like a caffeine addiction, mind you, it is the ritual of it. I love the ritual of coffee. And I think that there's just comfort in certain, routines and rituals. And then the other one I would say is like our evening walks with our dogs, is really important to me. And if I don't do it, I feel kind of like something is missing from the day. And I think that's because I just love walking. I mean, walking's so good for you. And it's such a great time to like not be in front of electronics and clear your head. But also, my husband works a lot and I work a lot. And so it's the one time that we are, just talking without other distractions, without the TV, without, me kind of working on the side when he's like, I thought you said you weren't going to work, things like that. So yeah, that's a very important routine for me.
Yeah. Now, what about if it's raining hard or snowing? Do you still go out in it with all your gear?
Yep, we sure do. There are a couple like wind, like if how the Pacific Northwest gets, if we get really bad wind storms, we won't go because, for one, it's kind of dangerous. There's like trees coming down and our dogs get startled, and you don't want to be out with a scared dog. If it's raining really, really, really intensely, then sometimes we'll kind of we'll go, okay, we won't go out. The dogs love the snow, so we actually do go out in the snow. And then the only other time we don't, the only other time we don't go is fireworks. So when there's a Seahawks game and people are setting off fireworks, because our dogs are terrified of them. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, when you are asked to give a speech, do you incorporate practicing the speech as part of your daily routine? And what does that look like?
Yeah, excellent question. And I'm going to tell you why it's such an excellent question. One of my biggest fears around public speaking, because as you know, there's 2 really big fears that I have: spiders and public speaking. And public speaking was literally one where, I'll tell you another story, just to show people how scared I really was of public speaking. So I went to graduate school, and I had made it through 2 years of intense like research, reading like some really boring like academic texts, right? And graduate school is not, it's not easy, right? It's very intensive. You're tired all the time. And I had made it through probably the first, 75-80% of the program when I learned that we were going to have a graduate school conference and I was going to have to present my research. And I am not exaggerating, Kim, when I say I literally was debating with myself whether to even finish a program that I had spent thousands of dollars on and like, so much of 2 years of my life. And I almost was like, is this worth it? Do I need this piece of paper if it requires me to get up there and speak? That's how scared I was of public
speaking. I understand.
Yeah, it was like, you're willing to give up so much just to avoid talking in front of people, right? And at the end of the day, I was like, I can't do that. That's ridiculous. And so I managed to get through it, and I survived. So proof that public speaking does not kill you. But when I think back on those kinds of, experiences, presentations in school and things like that, one of the things that I didn't do enough of was practicing. So, tying it back to your question, which is when I realized that the more you practice and the better you really truly know your talk, the less nervous you are, because one of the underlying fears was, what if I sound stupid? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I, get lost in my presentation? Well, a lot of those things go away if you know your presentation inside out. So absolutely. When I have a talk coming up, which I actually have two webinars coming up, I will at least 2 weeks beforehand start running through the presentation at once a day in the early, the early part of that 2-week period. And then, a day or two in the couple days leading up to the talk, then I'll usually go through it a couple of times so that I can also go through it with like not just for practice, but kind of looking at it for any last minute tweaks or, little errors, because inevitably you find like typos and things like that. So yep, every day for a couple of weeks leading up to a talk.
So are you speaking the whole thing, or are you just looking at slides, or you're doing everything at the same time?
I do it just as I would presenting it to an audience. So I go through the whole thing, which means probably 45 minutes to an hour of presenting to nobody every day. So, if you're going to do speaking and you want to be prepared, and I say every day, but that not on the weekends, right? Just like every work day I sit down and so like, you don't have to like grind every single day, but I think, I run through the whole thing and I present it. And in the early days, I felt really stupid presenting it that way, like really putting on, like the energy and everything behind it, because you're talking to nobody. But then it just kind of becomes second nature. And I think it's important to do it that way, because then when the time, like when you're doing the actual talk, where the different inflections, it kind of becomes muscle memory, right? Like where to pause and where the inflections are. So if you're just kind of reviewing it to remember when your content comes, like you're not doing the talk, justice, I think.
So you're kind of having like 10 dress rehearsals
basically
before you actually do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will say, just to, hopefully if people are listening and they're wanting to speak or whatever, once you have your talks established and you've done that, you don't have to do it every single day for 2 weeks, at least in my experience. Like I've given my sales stories talks so many times now that I only have to run through it a couple of times, before the event to feel like, okay, that's right. Like just kind of refresh my memory, like on where things are. But when you're first starting out and the talk is a new one, then definitely.
Yeah, you probably have some of them completely memorized.
I do. And
by now.
One of the things I did, I think before my very first talk, which, and I say very first, it's hard to, I mean, I've spoken to small groups and stuff in the past, but one of my like signature talks that I created, right? When I first gave that, I was so nervous about it that I practiced it so much that I would actually, when I was driving, when I was in the shower, I would do it without the slides. So I was like, oh yeah, now like I know this thing inside out without even the visual cues. And it made me so much less nervous when the time came. I mean, it's so important, I think, to practice.
So it helped you even without the slides, just to do it
Oh
wherever
yeah,
you were.
for sure. Yeah.
And did you ever, when you're practicing, do you ever record yourself and then watch it back?
I have done that. Yeah, I've definitely done that because I think it's important to, um, well, I would notice little things, right? Like, where am I looking, or do I look down a lot, or am I, moving my hands enough, or just those kind of things so that you can kind of identify, here's what I think I realized I didn't want to happen. A talk was going to be recorded and shared with the world. And I didn't want to look at it and go, oh my gosh, why do I have that weird, like, why do I make that facial expression? Or why do I look so stiff? Or why do I have my arms flailing or whatever? And you don't want that to be a surprise when your talk goes and gets like broadcast to the world. So I think for me to watch it back, I was like, oh, sit up straight, like do this, like make sure you're not playing with your hair. And that's another reason practicing is such an important part of the routine, because you need to break those habits, those bad habits that you didn't even know you had,
Wow.
because you're not watching yourself on video every day.
I think it would be hard to remember all of the things like with your arms flailing or like some people say,
Yes.
or there's just a lot of things. And how do you, I mean, you have to do the speech and you also have to remember all these other things. And it
Yeah,
must be a little difficult sometimes to remember everything.
it is. And at the same time, I think that's why your topic is so important, which is habits, right? We can break habits, we can create new habits. And so the more you prepare and practice and review those things and say, that's a habit I need to break, then the more it just becomes second nature and muscle memory rather than having to think about all of those things during your talk, right? And also, there's room for all of us to be human. I mean, sometimes we say, sometimes, we flip our hair or whatever, and that doesn't make or break a talk, right? But just in the grand scheme of things, I think it's really important to recognize the habits you have, both good and bad, so that you can change them.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Do you plan your work the night before? Or do you plan your
Um,
day from the night before or your clothes or?
yeah. So the clothes I used to do when I worked, a 9 to 5. Now my clothes are so just like leggings and a sweatshirt or something for the most part, that I don't really have to. But my day I do plan. So everything lives in this phone. My calendar rules me, because if I don't have something scheduled, if I don't have an alert set for something, I will probably forget to do it. So I will make sure the day before that everything that I need to do the next day, like this podcast chat, right? Like it's in my calendar, and I make sure that all of that is updated for the next day. But for the most part, I'm definitely not one of those. I hear a lot of entrepreneurs say that they love Sundays because they do all their content planning and get ready for the week on Sunday evening. Not me. Like I do all of that on Friday, so
Oh,
that I
on
don't have to do,
Friday.
yeah, I don't want to think about anything, even though I love what I do, but it's still like that's separate time. That's personal time, right? And so I don't want to spend my Sunday evenings doing that. So I get everything ready on Friday for Monday.
Wow, that's pretty good that you can
I
do that.
Well, thank you.
Like, don't look at anything on the weekend.
No, I try not to. Every once in a while, I mean, if I have something big, like, as you know, right now, I'm having all these technical issues with my website. And so there are days
Yes.
when I'm like, okay, I'm busy during the week with work and talks and things like that. So, I'll spend a little time this weekend to work on a project like that. But for the most part, I try to keep it Monday through Friday.
So you have good boundaries.
Now I do.
Yeah.
I definitely haven't always.
Do you have any
Yeah.
other good work boundaries?
Well, I think, that's kind of shifted over the years, where in the early days, I would say, yes to everything, right? Somebody wanted me to do, jump on a Zoom. This was really bad on when I was really active on LinkedIn, because if any of your listeners are active on LinkedIn, they know that every time you get a connection request, that following that is someone who's saying like, hey, I'd love to connect further with you. Like, let's, connect on Zoom. Here's a link to book time with me. And it's like, if you got on every call with everyone that asked you to book time with them, that's all you're doing. And so when I, first kind of started in the online business world a few years ago, well, I've been involved in it for years and years, but really like, LinkedIn and being active on there, I would get a lot of those requests and I would say, sure, sure. Cause I was like, oh, well, that's
wow.
right. Yeah. That, and I wouldn't say it to everybody, because there's also a lot of like creeps with ulterior motives on LinkedIn. Let's be real. But, I would say yes to a lot of them. And I was like, well, that's how you like do business, right? You make connections, you network, you nurture those connections, whatever. And then I felt like I was living inside of this LinkedIn world. I was like, it was too much. And so
Yeah.
I pulled back, and I now I say no to most people, to be honest, because they're all just trying to pitch you something anyways at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So I really just look for authentic connection before, like you and I, right? Like
Yeah.
you saw me give talks to a networking group, and then we got to know each other in this authentic way and chatting, and then it was like, do you want to get together for coffee? And by then you already know that it's genuine. You just want to get together and get to know each other better.
Yes.
So
And boy,
yeah.
are those coffees fun.
So much fun. So much
They're
fun. We
both
need to
like,
literally
and it's like, what? It's 5 hours later, 4
I
or five
was just
hours
going
later. It's
to
like, how did
say,
that happen?
we
So
need
much
to
fun.
actually, like, on my calendar, I need to make it like a bigger block of time for sure next time.
Yeah. So do you start your workday and end your workday at the same time every day?
Um, for the most part, yeah. Sometimes it will fluctuate, but even when it does, for example, this winter, I've been starting work a little bit later than I used to. And I just I'm like, my body needs that, because I had all this chronic health stuff going on. And so at first I was really like kind of mad at myself. I'm like, why am I having such a hard time getting up, early like I used to or whatever? And then I just realized sometimes your body is telling you what it needs. And so now I start a little later, but I still, for the most part, start, right at the same time. And then ending is not quite as firm, because my husband sometimes will work a little later. And so if he's working later, then I'll stay online and work a little later. But pretty much when he gets home is when I wrap things up, just because it becomes a circus. All the dogs are excited and they know that we're going to go walk and all of that stuff. So,
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let me see if there was anything else I wanted to ask you. I think I've asked you almost everything. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you would like to share with our listeners?
yeah. So, well, going back to the question, because I just was thinking about this, about other good boundaries in work. And so I
Yes.
think one thing that I learned really early on was having a dedicated workspace and not letting, because I work from home. And so it's very easy for work to start seeping into other parts of your life. And, I know some people like work from bed, and I'm not saying, don't do that if that works for you. But for me, I like to create, dedicated workspace. And then when I am ending at the end of the day, I close my computer and put it away, right? Because that's a
Oh,
boundary that is like, now work is done and now I'm in my personal time. So that's kind of a tip that I would give people, I think, who are working from home, which is a lot of people now, right? Not even just people who run their own business. Try to create a boundary between work and personal life, and out of sight, out of mind with your work stuff, just so that you actually don't feel like you're 24/7 in your work environment. And I think that can lead to
yeah.
some burnout. So Yeah.
Do you ever have distractions?
Oh, yes. With 4 dogs? Absolutely. Yes,
And
all the
so
time.
does it affect what you're doing, or do you just
It
ignore them?
Yeah, no, it does affect, like, for example, if FedEx, UPS, if anybody comes and like knocks on my door, like it is definitely disruptive, right? Because the dogs are like, oh my God, somebody's here. And I'm like, this happens almost every day, guys. Come on. Um, but it definitely does interrupt the flow. The great thing about those kind of disruptions is that dogs love routine. Dogs love structure. You're a
They
dog
sure
person,
do.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So if they get, if I have a routine, then their routine is the same as mine. And so they know when it's feeding time. They get like their stomach is like time to eat and they get up right on time. They know that like, oh, this is writing time, and they all curl up and sleep and stuff during that time. And then, we all have like the same routine now. And so, yeah, I don't have too many distractions, but when I do have them, I can't just like write through it, right? I'm very much like, okay, I've been pulled out of the zone.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So if you want to eat something
Yes.
during the day, do you
Uh-huh.
have it at your desk, or do you have to travel to the kitchen?
Oh, I travel to the kitchen. Yeah, I think that's another important boundary, right? Is for me personally, I'm not here to dictate like what works for other people, but I think for me, it's actively, intentionally taking the time to be mindful, like while you're eating and while you're doing something else that's not work, rather than like not even realizing. I'm sure that we've all done that thing where you're driving and your mind is somewhere else and you're like, oh my God, I don't even remember the last 10 minutes of the road. Like that
Oh,
seems
totally.
right.
Yeah.
That seems dangerous. But the same thing happens when we're eating. Like we're not really enjoying that soup or those like, chocolate dipped cashews or whatever. So yeah, I do try to kind of, separate those things for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other tips that you want to leave us with?
I don't think so. I mean, I could, me, I can talk all day and I've got tips for days, but I think, my last thing that I'll say is, I'm working on relaunching a website and making it better than ever. And I've got so much content lined out that is all educational content and how-to content. So if your listeners are interested in more tips from me, specifically around storytelling, communications, building your brand, then I'll have lots of those prepared here shortly. So they
Great.
can.
Where can they find you?
So right now they can find me at candidbranding.co. There's no M, don't make that mistake. So candidbranding.co.
Okay.
And then from there, so that's just kind of my temporary landing page while I'm building out this blog site. I'll have information on that landing page eventually to funnel people over to all that content.
Okay. And I will put all of it in the show notes.
Perfect.
So
Thank
thank
you.
you, Erin. Thank you so much for taking your time
No,
to do this today.
of course. Thank you so much for having me on. And I couldn't say no to you because you're just so much fun. And I knew it would be a great conversation. So happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. Well, let's have coffee soon.
Yes, let's have real coffee soon.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.